According to all known laws of aviation, there's no way that a bee should be able to fly. Its wings are too small to get its fat little body off the ground. The bee, of course, flies anyway because bees don't care about what humans think is impossible.
Welcome back to the channel. Today we have a fun little video. We have our first guest on the channel, Josh. He is kind of the go-to sound guy in my little mini network of creatives. As he's so knowledgeable and well-versed in the world of audio and sound, I wanted him to help me determine whether or not a lav mic and which lav mic would be well suited to the DJI 2 transmitter. The reality is, of course, it's not very necessary, I would assume, especially people who are using the transmitter. Just seeing the rise of kind of TikToks and social media adoption of this transmitter, I feel like it's fairly commonplace to see the actual transmitter in the video itself, either being held up like this or just clipped on. I often see it clipped to the collar of a t-shirt, and we're going to see that that's probably not the ideal placement, and actually something like this, clipping it with a magnet clip to your chest area is actually going to be a lot better. Which brings us to the format of how we tested things. It's not very rigid or properly done per se, a little bit more casual, but essentially each microphone we're recording two placements and two scenarios. This includes the transmitter itself, so we're going to use that as kind of our control. Placement one is what we're going to refer to as the ideal placement, which is kind of above the nipple line of your chest. Placement two is going to be clipped to the collar of the shirt, which again I've seen a lot on social media. In terms of the two quote-unquote scenarios, the bulk of our testing is Josh reciting a line from, I believe, the Bee Movie. He does some voiceover work on the side, so that's kind of how we structured that test. Something that he recites in a fairly similar manner, consistent manner, and comparing the mics that way. Second scenario, I wanted something that's a little bit more casual, just more realistic in terms of everyday casual speech. And on top of that, I wanted a different voice, so that's going to be my voice, and then we're going to compare each mic that way. But yeah, without further ado, let's jump into the samples.
According to all known laws of aviation, there's no way that a bee should be able to fly. Its wings are too small to get its fat little body off the ground. The bee, of course, flies anyway because bees don't care about what humans think is impossible. According to all known laws of aviation, there's no way that a bee should be able to fly. Its wings are too small to get its fat little body off the ground. The bee, of course, flies anyway because bees don't care about what humans think is impossible. According to all known laws of aviation, there's no way that a bee should be able to fly. Its wings are too small to get its fat little body off the ground. The bee, of course, flies anyway because bees don't care about what humans think is impossible. According to all known laws of aviation, there's no way that a bee should be able to fly. Its wings are too small to get its fat little body off the ground. The bee, of course, flies anyway because bees don't care about what humans think is impossible. According to all known laws of aviation, there's no way that a bee should be able to fly. Its wings are too small to get its fat little body off the ground. The bee, of course, flies anyway because bees don't care about what humans think is impossible. According to all known laws of aviation, there's no way that a bee should be able to fly. Its wings are too small to get its fat little body off the ground. The bee, of course, flies anyway because bees don't care about what humans think is impossible. According to all known laws of aviation, there's no way that a bee should be able to fly. Its wings are too small to get its fat little body off the ground. The bee, of course, flies anyway because bees don't care about what humans think is impossible. According to all known laws of aviation, there's no way that a bee should be able to fly. Its wings are too small to get its fat little body off the ground. The bee, of course, flies anyway because bees don't care about what humans think is impossible. According to all known laws of aviation, there's no way that a bee should be able to fly. Its wings are too small to get its fat little body off the ground. The bee, of course, flies anyway because bees don't care about what humans think is impossible. According to all known laws of aviation, there's no way that a bee should be able to fly. Its wings are too small to get its fat little body off the ground. The bee, of course, flies anyway because bees don't care about what humans think is impossible. According to all known laws of aviation, there's no way that a bee should be able to fly. Its wings are too small to get its fat little body off the ground. The bee, of course, flies anyway because bees don't care about what humans think is impossible. According to all known laws of aviation, there's no way that a bee should be able to fly. Its wings are too small to get its fat little body off the ground. The bee, of course, flies anyway because bees don't care about what humans think is impossible. According to all known laws of aviation, there's no way that a bee should be able to fly. Its wings are too small to get its fat little body off the ground. The bee, of course, flies anyway because bees don't care about what humans think is impossible. According to all known laws of aviation, there's no way that a bee should be able to fly. Its wings are too small to get its fat little body off the ground. The bee, of course, flies anyway because bees don't care about what humans think is impossible. According to all known laws of aviation, there's no way that a bee should be able to fly. Its wings are too small to get its fat little body off the ground. The bee, of course, flies anyway because bees don't care about what humans think is impossible.
This is the DJI Mic 2, just the transmitter by itself, magnet clipped into the middle of the chest. Shout out to Josh, thank you for coming. Rodelink Lav into the Mic Go 2. It does have a pretty, DJI Mic 2. It does have a really secure connection. I see what you mean, Josh. This is nice. Wedding people probably have this mic already. And if you pick up a DJI Mic 2 because you want to be fancy and risk it all on a wedding day, you can use this. If I just do it like this, because I'm too lazy to switch back and forth.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to try to be as stationary as possible. This is above the nippies. This is the casual conversation mic test with my voice, Sanken COS-11d, DJI Mic 2 transmitter. Just holding it up to my chest. Hi, my name is Joon. This is a YouTube channel that is very confused and very lazy, and I do not upload as frequently as I should, but this is an audio sample and I like audio. Here's a test, TikTok. I'm not on TikTok, but we hear that this is what the influencers be doing. I think it does apply a lot of processing too, like some sort of compression going on or EQ going on. There seems to be like a lot more body, maybe noise reduction too. Here's the TikTok length distance away from my mouth and holding the microphone. If I don't unravel the cable, what happens? The TikTok test for COS-11d, Sennheiser MKE 2. And here is the TikTok placement, the one that we know and love, the one that is defining audio now, moving forward. Yeah, that's kind of the impression I got, but maybe I'll play it for you afterwards, actually, because I'm curious to see what you think too, and I obviously don't remember, it's not super fresh in my mind. Yeah. I was just surprised when I heard it. Pretty sure it's going to record onboard recordings as well, and I'm fairly certain that it sounds very different. So one major concern I have right now, there's actually a huge difference between the local recording and the one that's baked into the Pocket 3 footage. In some, there seems to be a 10 to 12 decibel boost in the built-in audio, so we can listen to that for a second here. Welcome back to the channel. Today we have a fun little video. We have our first guest on the channel, Josh. He is kind of the go-to. So that's baked in. We're going to switch over to the onboard local recording. Welcome back to the channel. Today we have a fun little video. We have our first guest on the channel, Josh. He is kind of the go-to sound guy in my little mini. Okay, so this is audio from the transmitter and the resulting video file. So it's automatically synced up with the Pocket 3. It's connected via Bluetooth. I'm going to switch over to the onboard recording now, which is supposed to be 32-bit, and I believe that's enabled when you select that in the menu, 32-bit audio float recording, blah, blah. So that's a local kind of a backup audio file that's recording directly to the transmitter. Why this is an issue. So not only is there a boost, there seems to be a lot of processing there. It's very different from the locally recorded audio. For example, you hear way less room echo. So it's really cutting a lot of that low end out. A lot of compression going on, a lot of limiting, and then denoising, I think, as well. So across the board, all the audio is going to sound a little bit worse, perhaps, than what it could sound like. I mean, maybe better if you're not comfortable with post-processing audio, but it does seem to be a bit aggressive in how it's treating that audio. And I think the result is something that sounds a little bit less natural, very muddy, I'm finding as well. So it's something to keep in mind with these tests. Each audio sample, I think, is not going to sound as good as it could, because the Pocket 3 is doing a ton of processing. If you're just using the locally recorded files, I think that's actually not treated. It's the actual raw audio. I'm not sure what happens if you use the DJI receivers, so plugging it into a camera. But at the end of the day, it is something that's not changing. It's constant between each test. So across the board, even though there's that processing applied, we should still theoretically be able to tell the differences between each lav. But yeah, something to consider. And every time I'm going to use this wireless mic, I'm probably going to enable that 32-bit local recording so that I can post-process it in the way that I want to.
Hey guys, it's Josh again. So Joon just sent me a recording of all the tests we did. I've listened to them a few times, and here are some of my thoughts. First, we had the built-in mic on the transmitter. On the chest, which is more or less the ideal position. In retrospect, I probably would have put it a little bit higher, but it sounded perfectly tolerable with a good amount of presence, although the top end is still a bit sharp for my ears. On the collar, which is where a lot of people are going to put it for convenience, it did sound noticeably scooped. So what that means is it's missing a lot of mid-range. The downside with that is that the high end seems kind of shrill, which makes it kind of fatiguing to listen to in the long run, especially to my ears. So if you're looking for something convenient and you don't mind looking like a goober, the built-in on the transmitter is perfectly fine. Next up, we had the cheapest lav mic, which was the Rodelink Lav. As expected, it was the least impressive of the bunch. On the chest, it was muddy with not a lot of high end. It's even some audible distortion at times, especially on the low end. With the collar position, we had even less high end, which is kind of expected. Next up, the Tascam TM-10L. So this is the one that comes with the DR10L, plus the newer models as well. This one was kind of middle of the road. Definitely clearer than the road. That wasn't a pun. The road was definitely not middle of the road. It was definitely clearer than the road, but with not as much sibilance as the built-in mic. Although like the Rode mic, it was noticeably muddier on the collar. All that considered, this definitely wouldn't be my first choice, considering it's quite a bit bulkier and costs about the same as the next mic, the Deity W.Lav Pro. The Deity we found was the clearest sounding one so far. Not as much low end as the others, which is probably a good thing, but it picked up the least of the environment compared to the other cheap mics, and the sibilance to my ears was not nearly as fatiguing as some of the others. And when we moved it to the collar, it still retained quite a bit of sibilance and definition, but the low end can still be a little bit overpowering, especially because the mic kind of sits right against the neck. Out of the cheaper mics we've tried so far, including the built-in mic, this one does seem the most idiot-proof per se, as in if you put it in a precarious position with a lot of chin shadow, it'll tolerate it the best. So if you're on a budget and you want something that's not obtrusive, it's a very small microphone. In fact, it's actually designed to work with accessories that are made for the Sanken COS-11, which is in the lineup as well, but way more expensive, then the Deity W.Lav Pro would probably be my pick. Also, I found in tiny mic style interviews, which I've actually had to do quite a bit for big clients. I actually tested this guy between my Sanken and my Sennheiser, and actually the Deity held up the best when it's held up right in front of the speaker's face. And the biggest contributing factor to that was not only did it have a bit of natural compression compared to the other two, which can be a good or a bad thing depending on the scenario, it also didn't develop that super harsh sibilance that some of these other mics can get when you're directly in line with somebody's mouth, because that's not what they're designed for. W.Lav Pro, can recommend. Next up was the tried and true Sanken COS-11d. Now, I want to acknowledge right off the bat, the Sanken COS-11d was not designed to be used in this particular scenario, floating above the body or especially not directly underneath the neck. It's meant to be taped onto somebody's chest under 2, sometimes 3 layers of clothing I've put it under, and it's held up just fine. It's gone in people's scarves, it's gone through buttonholes, it's gone in people's hats, and even in their hair. There's actually clips that you could buy where you clip it onto the side of their heads. It holds up just fine. The reason it holds up like that is because it's not just because it's designed with a high-end boost to maintain that sibilance in precarious positions, but it also listens to the resonance of the voice coming from the body, which tends to fill out the low end, especially on the chest. So the scenario we put it in definitely didn't do the Sanken a whole lot of favors. What we found on the chest was that it didn't have a whole lot of low end and could sound somewhat hollow. It also picked up quite a bit more of the environment, partly because of that high-end boost. This can make it useful actually, because I've used this in wedding scenarios where we could mic up the groom but couldn't mic up the bride, and this guy would pick up the bride just fine standing right across from him, although you would have to apply noise reduction in post, which isn't the worst thing considering how good DaVinci Resolve's dialogue isolator tool has gotten. But when we move it to the collar, the low end does fill out a little bit on the collar and does maintain enough definition, but can sound a little bit muddy on the low end, although that's probably just my voice in particular. I found some people have a kind of a buzzy resonance in their voice when they hit certain syllables, so that might just be me. But this mic is durable, it's versatile. If you're going to use it on a set where you've got to hide mics a lot, or there's a danger of it being ripped out by talent or costume by accident, there's a reason this mic holds up so well. Although if you just want an excuse to get the DJI Mic transmitter off your chest, this probably isn't the one for you. And that takes us to the Sennheiser MKE 2, the most expensive one and probably the best performer of them all. On the chest, it was comparable with the W.Lav, although with noticeably less low end, but on the collar, it was by far the most natural sounding of them all. Also, it picked up quite a bit less of the environment around it. So the echo of the square room with the hard walls and also the rain outside, which you could hear on almost every other mic, this guy picked up by far the least of that. So a couple sources of error to note. First of all, we don't really know what kind of engineering DJI has done on the built-in mic that it picks up noticeably less room noise than most of the other mics. Whether or not it's noise reduction on board or some other tomfoolery they've done with it, we're not entirely sure. But a bigger potential source of error was one of the things that makes the DJI mic so convenient to use, but is very problematic in a professional context. If you look at the waveforms on the timeline, we can see that there's much less dynamic range being represented on all of the mics except for the Sennheiser. The signal almost seems kind of squished to the top. You can kind of hear that compression as well. My theory is that the DJI mic might have a built-in limiter or compressor, which is why the only mic we don't see it affecting is the Sennheiser, because it's a low sensitivity mic that we found needed 7 to 9 less decibels of gain to get it level. So the reason we hear it sounds more natural and there's more dynamic range being preserved was because it wasn't hitting the limiter threshold and getting compressed. If we had the normal sensitivity model, I'm wondering how the DJI mic would behave there. The trouble is, if this was a more professional level system like the Sennheiser EW100 or the Deities, those don't have limiters or compressors on board. So if it was hitting maximum level, it would peak and distort. So you would just turn down the sensitivity. And this is actually preferable because you preserve all the dynamic range for post-production and you don't have the noise floor of your environment going up and down, which can be very distracting and makes it way harder to work with in post. And it's this, among a few other reasons, that the DJI mic just wouldn't fly on a professional set, because you don't have that degree of control that you get with more professional systems. Automation is nice to a degree, but in this case, when it's affecting the integrity and the quality of your recording, you don't want your equipment to have a mind of its own like this. But at the end of the day here, what was the objective? What were we looking for? So we were looking for a mic that somebody with the budget for just the DJI mic could add on to their kit relatively inexpensively and get fairly good results even in precarious scenarios. It has to be convenient, unobtrusive, and not fatiguing to listen to over time. That being said, my picks would be as follows. By far the best performer would be the MKE2, but if you've got the money for the MKE2, then you're probably not using the DJI mic. For somebody trying to stay on a budget, my recommendation can wholeheartedly go to the Deity W.Lav Pro. It performs better for the same price as the Tascam and only $10 more than the Rode. Although a couple words of warning, the included clip is kind of flimsy, so just keep in mind you may have to apply a bit of tape or maybe look into another clip. If you're planning to use this a lot outside or in tiny mic style interviews, I would recommend buying the Bumblebee Wind Bubble, specifically the one for Sanken. They're about $35 a piece, and you can actually get them in different colors so they blend in with clothing a little bit better. This is actually a trick I've learned from Korean variety shows, where they'll actually put the fur windscreen on regardless if they're outside or not, so it looks more like an accessory rather than something electronic. So yeah, those are my thoughts. Thanks for having me, and I'll let Joon close us out from here.
According to all known laws of aviation, there's no way that a bee should be able to fly. According to all known laws of aviation, there's no way that a bee should be able to fly. According to all known laws of aviation, there's no way that a bee should be able to fly. According to all known laws of aviation, there's no way that a bee should be able to fly. According to all known laws of aviation, there's no way that a bee should be able to fly. According to all known laws of aviation, there's no way that a bee should be able to fly. According to all known laws of aviation, there's no way that a bee should be able to fly. According to all known laws of aviation, there's no way that a bee should be able to fly. According to all known laws of aviation, there's no way that a bee should be able to fly. According to all known laws of aviation, there's no way that a bee should be able to fly. According to all known laws of aviation, there's no way that a bee should be able to fly. According to all known laws of aviation, there's no way that a bee should be able to fly. According to all known laws of aviation, there's no way that a bee should be able to fly.